So with the release of The War Within coming soon, and probably already here by the time of the release of this video, I decided to play World of Warcraft, which is something I haven't done in a long time. In fact, I've never played modern WoW. The farthest I ever got in World of Warcraft was the Burning Crusade, and even then I didn't get too far in. So I was sure I'd be in for a shock, and believe you me, was I ever. So starting the game up was super nostalgic. I chose to play as a human mage, so starting in Elwynn Forest was just great. I noticed right away how they altered some of the content in Cataclysm, as there was a burnt/on fire area that a bunch of orcs were wandering around in that I didn't remember from pre-Cataclysm. The early levels were pretty great actually, and the fast rate at which I was leveling up was really the only issue I had. But my first real issue began when I reached level 10 and could now use mounts, something which previously wasn't unlocked until level 20 if I remember correctly, and it looks like after doing some research that it was actually level 40 in vanilla World of Warcraft. But Blizzard did a level crunch apparently. I got a message when I started the game that if you previously had a level 120 character, it would now be level 50. So with that being the case, it makes sense that you could unlock mounts earlier. But that also being said, the speed at which I was leveling up didn't match. You'd think that squishing 120 levels into 50 would slow down the pace at which you upgrade, but nope. I hit level 10 before I even left Elwynn Forest. Now, I'll need to clarify why this is a problem to me, because to some it might not be, but it just didn't feel right. It was too quick. I didn't feel like I earned it. In fact, it's not something I even wanted to earn yet. I was exploring the world with fresh eyes. I wanted to do that slowly and just take it all in, but getting the mount so early just made the game feel too rushed. And then there's the mount itself. What is this thing? This looks like something Prince Arthas should be riding, not my measly level 10 mage wearing rags. But this is the basic mount that I saw so many players riding. This reminds me of when I got a copy of Pokemon the first movie on VHS on its release day, and it came with a special Mewtwo Pokemon card. And I was like, yes, finally, I've got a Mewtwo card. Wait till the guys at school get a load of this. And then when I showed up the next day, everyone had that card. And then having a Mewtwo card was no longer a big deal. And that's what this feels like, it cheapens it. This should be some badass mount you get way down the line, not as your first mount. Your first mount should be as basic as they come. In fact, give me a horse with an eye patch and a missing leg, and now we'll be cooking with gas. And then maybe, down the road, you could even get your horse an upgrade with a dwarven or gnomish bionic leg and cybernetic eye, and then that super basic mount will now be one of the best. But anyway, that's just the game developer in me. I digress. The mount issue was a bit of an annoyance, but it was by no means a deal breaker. But soon enough I ran into a bigger issue. And that was, as I was just about done the majority of quests in Elwynn Forest, I noticed on my map there was an exclamation mark in Stormwind City that said Dragon Isles. And I thought, I know the Dragon Isles were part of the Dragonflight expansion, but why was I getting a quest for this now? So I headed to Stormwind to uncover the mystery, and on my way there I stumbled upon another quest that led me to speak with King Anduin Wrynn and Lady Jaina Proudmoore. As soon as I arrived at the location, I saw an epic cinematic where there was this great naval conflict, and they talked about this epic conflict with the Horde and how we must make allies with Kul Tiras, or Kul Tiras, I don't know how to say that. Kul Tiras. Kul Tiras, once again. When this scene was over, my quest was to meet Jaina Proudmoore at the docks to head out to Kul Tiras. So I'm thinking, I don't get why once again I'm getting this quest now, but before I do anything, I want to continue on and find out what the deal is with this Dragonflight quest. And it turned out I didn't have to explore very far to get the quest. Once again, I got involved in this epic narrative and cinematic, and everybody is all stoked for me to come to the Dragon Isles. But at this point, I'm at information overload with two very different epic narratives given to me. So I'm like, screw this, I'm going back to Westfall. And once there, I feel I can just breathe and enjoy the game now. And so I'm doing some random quest that has nothing to do with the fate of the world, and an enemy drops some dragon scale item that's linked to the dragon Dragon Isles quest. So I clicked on it and it transported me back to the characters that wanted me to go to the Dragon Isles. So at this point I'm like, fine, clearly the game wants me to go to the Dragon Isles, so I'll go. I go through this portal to the docks and my quest is to assemble a crew to go to the Dragon Isles. Conveniently though, everyone I need to talk to is essentially lined up. And so I don't actually need to hunt anybody down, which is pretty bad storytelling, I've got to be honest. All I have to do is walk up to them and say, hey, want to uproot your life and sail away to some mysterious island with me, a stranger you've never met before, on a ship that's located just over there that will be crewed by an elite group of people with rare special skills that are needed and are luckily located all around us here in the docks but don't know they're going yet and we're leaving in about 5 minutes? Like, come on. So anyway, after everybody obviously agrees with no issues, we head off to the Dragon Isles. And I do this by going through a portal because the boat just took off right before I could get on. And I'm not gonna lie, this is a pretty awesome location, artistically, scene-wise. And it's one that I'd love to continue to explore through, but the thing is that the thing that is getting in my way is the game design and storytelling. When you first get to the island, you find out about these dangerous creatures called proto-dragons, and this is where I ran into another problem. There were so many of them, and yet I, playing alone, had no problem fending them all off and taking them out, when just previously I had tried to solo the Jasper Lode mine in Elwyn Forest and I could barely get in the front door. The second problem that I had was that there were other players around me doing the same quests as I was, but we were all different levels, but we were all progressing at the same rate, which can only mean that the enemies here are based off the level of your character rather than just having a fixed level. So what might be a level 12 proto-dragon to me might be a level 32 proto-dragon to another character, even if it is the same exact enemy that we are fighting. I'm not a big fan of this. I like having some areas limited to me just purely based on the fact that enemies are way higher level than I am. It just doesn't seem right, but it does now make sense to me why they let me go to the Dragon Isles at such an early level. And same for Culturas if they do the same thing there. It also makes sense because for players who have been playing the game for 20 some years, they may be tired of playing through Elwyn Forest and want more options for more locations to go through, to have a different path each time they play the game, so they aren't stuck on such a linear path for every character they make. And that would actually be fine if they kept the design formula the way they had it in vanilla, where there wasn't really this overarching grand narrative, but rather just a world inhabited with many NPCs who had plenty of quests. If they'd stuck with that, then you could pull off this style of gameplay. But the problem is that they didn't. At some point along the line, they started adding in these grand epic narratives. And because they stuck with this, but are also allowing newer zones to be played by lower level characters, it means things get narratively very confusing, and I'll explain how that happened for me. So if we rewind a bit, after I talked to King Anduin and the Dragon Isles characters and decided to go back to Westfall, I ran into this NPC who was complaining about King Varian Rin. Now, I looked this up and my suspicion was correct. King Varian was king during the time period that vanilla is set. Obviously, by the time of Battle for Azeroth, Anduin is the king. I was able to piece that together based on the little knowledge that I had. But what if a player who didn't know a single thing about the lore or when each expansion came out decided to play this game? They'd be so confused, and it gets worse. When I was getting all the BFA information, I found out about the conflict with the Horde and the Alliance. Once I stepped out of that meeting, I ran up the hall to the Dragonflight characters. They basically said not to bring any conflicts to their doors, and I'm like, oh shit, should I tell them? So when I got to the Dragon Isles, I started seeing a bunch of Horde characters all around me. And I almost missed this as I was walking away, but I heard some characters talking about peace between the Horde and the Alliance, and I'm like, well, I guess I don't need to talk to Jaina now. Would have been nice to get the memo, but of course, we both know she'll be there, waiting at the docks, and once I go to Culturas, the war will still be on. The problem is they're giving us 20 years of storytelling all at the same time. The only way for a player to get around this without having the story impacted is to be up to date with the story and lore, which essentially means that Blizzard is unintentionally gatekeeping the game from new players, and yet they wonder why their numbers keep going down. The way I see it, there are two ways to fix it, but each choice comes with limitations on the game design. Right now, Blizzard is trying to have its cake and eat it too, and it's just not working. The first way is to get rid of the grand narratives. And although I personally wouldn't want the enemies level to scale according to the player, this would allow them to do that, should that be the game design choice they want to go with. The second way is to keep the grand narratives, and I think this is what most people would want. But to do this, it needs to be presented in a way that is coherent to the player. In other words, they should present each expansion one at a time. If my character is level 1 to 60, or whatever the equivalent squish number is, 1 to 25 probably, only let me see classic content, and so on. I shouldn't be able to see or talk to Anduin until he becomes relevant in the storyline, because in vanilla, he's just a kid. And if people don't want to be locked in like this to the story, they could always have the option to play the game as it is right now. But new players should be able to experience the story uninterrupted by bits of future stories that conflict with each other. I don't want to say that this would be easy, because as a game dev I can tell you that sometimes the simplest things can be the hardest and the most complicated things can be the easiest, but still though, complicated or not, if you want to have a game with grand narratives, then those narratives should be accessible to everyone, and right now they just aren't. And this way, of course, would keep the traditional set in stone levels of enemies and zones. And that's really what it comes down to. Now, I want to mention something else that bugged me, and that was getting the Battle for Azeroth quest to begin with. It starts with champion, blah 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 blah. Like, I don't want to be the champion. Somewhere along the line, I think they lost track of what it actually meant to be in this world. We're a world filled with champions. They're just some random guy. They shouldn't be calling me champion. That actually breaks the immersion of the story for me. And even the way that they set up these narratives is like, I'm conveniently located in the right place at the right time to be part of the story as it's going on. To me, World of Warcraft shouldn't be that way. I'm just some person who stumbles into the adventure. You know, if anything, I should feel like a hobbit in The Lord of the Ring. You know that scene when they're discussing what to do with the ring and they're all yelling at each other and Frodo's like, okay, I'll do it, when he was expecting just to go back home? Like, that's how you should feel as a character in the World of Warcraft. The fun is going around and doing these random quests. If there is a grand epic narrative, if anything, it should be kind of pulling you away from that fun that you're having, but it's delivering an experience and you just happen to be the guy that's there to be part of this quest. I don't know if that makes any sense, but long story short, making yourself the champion in a world full of champions just doesn't fit right. It breaks the immersion, makes me disinterested in the story. But that's really all I have for now. I may have more to say about this later on. But what do you think about all this? Does Blizzard need to clean up its storytelling or what? Let me know in the comments. And if you've watched this far, please consider subscribing. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.